You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to Thursday, which we prefer to call Friday Eve. I lost track of my days.
Well, that's easy to do this week.
We've only been here like one day.
Yeah, because it's kind of a Tuesday, but yet it's still a Thursday.
Figure that one out.
Yeah.
And that's Butters on the board. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. It's a beautiful day. I'm ready for massive blizzards. I went out and I don't know, the bread and milk.
Has there been a run on bread and milk already?
I don't know. I think so, but I'm
Are
scared.
Are we going to get a blizzard? Is it going to happen?
The last report I saw from James Spann, who knows all weather in Alabama.
He is the know-all.
Yeah, I think he actually creates the weather, but he says we'll probably have potential for some accumulation in altitudes above 1,000 feet on the grass. So.
Well, as long as James Spann does not have his suspenders showing and his sleeves rolled up, we're all safe.
So I explained that to my Canadian family over the holidays, and they looked at me with disbelief. It's like, you just have to experience it.
You just have to understand. And oh, by the way, if you live on a corner in the backside of Egypt, Alabama, he's going to know exactly where you are because he is virtually omniscient within his listening area.
Turn left, and you should see it right there.
There's an oak tree, and then you'll. All right, hey, we got a great show laid on for you. Aside from our love for James Spann, we got a great show laid on. 3:30 today. It's Thursday, so we're doing a round of Butters and Lee. That's going to be at 3:30, so stand by for that one. Going to be good. We'll play the whoop-whoops and see what Butters and Lee have to say about topics in general. And then I got a triple dipper just full of stuff, so hit it.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper, 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. Number 1, didn't get to it yesterday, so we're getting to it today. First out, wars and rumors of wars. Y'all, there's a world out there that is decidedly dangerous, and there are several places that are flashpoints, and there are some that have already spilled over. And so we're going to talk about them in detail because we got to stay ahead of the game. We got to know where we are. Keep your head on a swivel, your powder dry. We're going to talk about wars and rumors of wars. There's that. Number 1, the Triple Dipper. Number 2, man, I got so much. I mean, it could wind up dominating a huge section of the show. Jackassery. We're going to talk about some serious jackassery, like policies put in place by government officials you look at and go, how did you ever get elected? Because that is jackassery. So we'll talk about that. Number 2, Triple Dipper, jackassery. And then number 3, all right, so have you seen them blocking the roads? Have you seen them throwing paint on, statues and gluing their hands to, classic paintings in museums? Have you seen the activism out there right now? It's B grade. It's a bunch of Bush League. I'm going to call it B grade activism is what we're talking about on number 3 of the Triple Dipper. B grade activism. What separates good activists from bad activists? Well, the B grade activism gives us all of the don't do it this way type scenarios. That's number 3 on the Triple Dipper. All right, let me move over here to my opening monologue, and I'll just remind you guys, Southern Immediate Care. Southern Immediate Care, a chain of clinics that covers a huge swath of our listening area all over the place. I mean, like, y'all, they're covering places like Gadsden, Anniston, Attala, 6 locations around the Birmingham area, more coming. Southern Immediate Care, open 7 days a week. They will see all ages. I'm talking about pediatric to geriatric. Southern Immediate Care, sponsor of the Daily Rightside Way monologue. So here's the thing. I have no problem with people gathering to share their thoughts and opinions. I don't. I understand the freedoms of assembly, of association, the actual freedom of speech. And I can't say it's only good here in the U.S. I have to believe that if it's a good thing here, it's also just a plain old good thing, whether here or abroad. The world needs to know that it can assemble peaceably and share thoughts and opinions without any persecution or backlash of any kind. Having said that, it doesn't mean I have to trust every assembly of opinionated pundits. Not by a stretch. In fact, there are some that gather and share their much lauded opinions that only make me trust them all the less when they do. They bring themselves out in the open. They speak their nonsense. They talk of what they will do if the rest of us don't get on board, and most of the world looks at them sideways and ignores them. But every once in a while, there's a gathering that just seems like it's on a next level, as if something more is happening than just a cavalcade of opinions, as if maybe evil just massed itself in one place and celebrated their plans for world domination. Do I sound a bit extreme? Maybe. I try not to let myself delve too deeply into conspiratorial darkness, but there are a few groups that I believe are actually intent on wreaking havoc. Two in particular have their grand events within months of each other, and they are, in my opinion, far more dangerous than any cosplay or geek conference or gathering of mere intellectuals. The two that give me the most pause are the annual gatherings of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, and the United Nations Climate Change Conference, which is known simply as the COP. It is at these two meetings that we hear some of the most ridiculous theories and calls to action that sound like something from a Hunger Games movie, and yet they're met by applause by the world's elite who also look like Hunger Games characters. We get calls to eliminate fossil fuels, to eat bugs, to eradicate national borders, to eliminate cultural norms, to erase biological truths, to declare crises where there are none, and declare peace where there is none. The World Economic Forum and the COP. These two groups are the incubators of liberal progressive power grabs. Not by a small bit, mind you. These are fully sanctioned, attended by world leaders, and every time they meet, there are agenda items that begin to make it into the policies and the regulations and the laws of the nations of the world. Well, this year, the COP met in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. It was a star-studded affair, with grand speeches and a heady atmosphere that comes from being in a room where everyone is important and every speech is like a sermon filled with words of life-changing evangelism. This year, at what was known as the COP28 gathering, the United Nations website says that, quote, the world came together to agree on ways to address the climate crisis, such as limiting global temperatures rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius, helping vulnerable communities adapt to the effects of climate change, and achieving net zero emissions by 2050. Wow. Sounds impressive. Sounds noteworthy and of great potential for the greater good, right? Until you begin to look at the ways they plan to engage the world in their quest for all that is good and right and fossil fuel free. First off, you should know that it was really big doings when, quote, after 30 years of waiting, more than 190 nations this year agreed to a framework to transition away from fossil fuels. Now, I'm sorry, I thought that was a gathering of climate activists and intellectual elites, but now there's actual nations signing on to the COP28 agenda? But that wasn't good enough. Someone named Omar El-Mawi from a group calling itself the Africa Movement Building Space adamantly stated, quote, proposing a transition away from fossil fuels may sound like a step in the right direction, a glimmer of hope amidst chaos. However, let us not underestimate the cunning tactics of fossil fuel giants and petrostates. They will cleverly disguise their products as transitional fuels, especially in the most vulnerable corners of the world. Yet even the once unyielding fossil fuel giants and petrostates are now witnessing the inevitable, a world free of their toxic grip. Guess which one of us is called a petrostate? That would be the United States. So yeah, also at COP28, though, in the spirit of Greta Thunberg, a 12-year-old Indian climate activist stormed the stage and interrupted a speech with her sign that read, "End fossil fuels, save our planet and our future." So what's a 12-year-old girl from India doing traveling to Dubai to interrupt a conference on any subject? Well, COP28 also culminated with the way forward to enact their global strategies. Global efforts call for global dollars, right? Well, apparently the US, the UK, and Germany, since we are among the most evil of climate-abusing nations and need to atone for our sins, they committed $700 million to a global climate reparations fund. That's $700 million, a huge chunk of which came from your taxpayers. Followed by a U.S. commitment, by the way, to pledge another $3 billion, that's billion with a B, to a green climate fund for reducing the emissions and adapting to climate change in developing countries. Which, by the way, then drew a rebuke also because it just wasn't enough. And apparently we pledged the same amount during the Obama years, but we only paid $1 billion. Just, only $1 billion. But don't worry, because COP28 did launch the first ever task force on the international effort to tax polluting industries on global taxation. Yeah. It was said that, quote, this is huge because it has the potential to unlock billions. So they want to bring us down. They want to destroy our economies. They don't care what effort it takes as long as they can, globally tax us because we're a petrostate. And yes, Joe Biden's climate czar, John Kerry, was there representing the United States in an official capacity, by the way. Lest anyone think that we're not fully on board with the whole climate change is an existential crisis mantra. But listen, the one that got me, the one that really got me, the official attendee that sort of flew under the radar, that I have to wonder why were they even there, was the U.S. Department of Defense. I mean, what is the DOD doing at COP28 in Dubai? Aren't there wars that we need to fight or something? Aren't there actual bad guys that need killing or threats that need stopping or tyrants that need toppling or something? No, because climate change is the actual existential threat that we face, and therefore it's a matter of national security. And for that reason, it is imperative that our uniformed warfighters be in attendance at the annual gathering of evil henchmen known as the COP. The DOD was quite proud of its attendance. The DOD actually issued a press release to describe the climate change resilience of the various branches of the military, the commitment to global climate change by the armed forces of the United States, and the fact that multiple secretary and deputy secretary level DOD officials attended COP28 to, here it is, quote, underscore the Defense Department's role as a global leader in managing the impacts of climate change on resilience, peace, and stability, and highlighting the DOD's key role in the U.S. whole-of-government approach to addressing the climate crisis. Y'all, that is not a worthy use of our military. That is not where the DOD should be spending its time. That is not where highly paid secretary-level positions within the Pentagon should be flying and junketing to spend time talking about what we need to do with our uniformed services. These are not serious people. Not in the rational sense. But even irrational people cannot be ignored. The fact that our military is bragging about its participation in an international conference that talks smack about global taxation, and in which the United States, that our military, by the way, is designed to serve and protect, the United States is excoriated as an evil petrostate, is a dangerous thing, and we should not stand for it, nor should we ignore it. So yeah, the COP is a joke, but the COP is also serious. And it's past time the U.S. had a cop out and quit encouraging global elites to attempt to change our lives and get our DOD back to what its real mission should be. And that's a wrap for the Rightside Way. Oh, there's a rant for you. I mean, the COP28 is an elite joke. The whole climate hoax has got to be dealt with. But the very idea that senior level secretaries and undersecretaries from the Department of Defense are flying over there to make their appearances and their speeches and to show the climate change existential threats being dealt with by the U.S. military is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard come out of the Pentagon. My God, 2024 can't get here fast enough. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. I mean, that monologue got me fired up. That was one of those. It was like easy to type. I was just wearing it out, man. I was like angry typing. Just click.
Didn't affect me in the slightest. Doesn't frustrate me or make me upset or angry or. Yeah, no, I'm totally, it is what it is.
Did you take a special pill before the show started? What's happening with you?
I wish.
I got a caller on line one. Let me do that real quick. Sparky from Harvest. Hey, brother, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm sorry I missed most of that monologue. I only caught the very end there, but I consider myself not only a right-side ruffian, but a climate change denier emeritus.
Whoop, whoop.
In that I have actually studied, I have studied the science for years, but also I've studied the money and who in politics gets rich by making their friends richer, by denying us buying certain products, appliances, et cetera, or forcing us to buy certain things, making their friends who produce those things filthy rich. I think the United States has led the world over the last 50 years in reducing pollution into the air, sea, and water, and soil. We've led the world on reducing pollution, and we do it because it's the right thing to do.
That's right.
But to blindly trust government, as in the case of this corrupt Obama and Biden administration want us to trust, based on the big lie of man-made global climate change, is when in fact it's just making them richer and richer and denying us our personal choices and liberties, and it's all about power and cash for these people. And that they lie so outrageously about it is what makes me almost as mad as you were in that segment, Phil.
Well, thanks for that, Sparky. And by the way, if I'm not mistaken, didn't Al Gore own a business that sold carbon offsets, quote unquote, so you could send a whole lot of money to him and he would plant a tree somewhere in your name or something like that?
Yeah. And you know what? I read something today that almost made me laugh, but it was so true. Somebody said that people who vote consistently Democrat either do so because somehow they're going to get things and stuff, and benefits out of voting that way.
Yeah.
In other words, they're voting for a living, or else they're so wealthy that they can afford to be virtue signaling ding-dongs who believe in all these, on the surface, noble agendas, when in fact they themselves aren't bright enough to see that they're being conned and that they're contributing to the con. So I don't know how anybody believes any of this stuff when not a single person that I know of who believes in man-made global climate change can name a single peer-reviewed study that definitively proves that it even exists. And you know why, Phil? Because there isn't one. There never has been one.
But Sparky, with 10 seconds left, you know that our Department of Defense wouldn't be at the COP climate, or conference if it wasn't like an existential threat to our survival.
Yeah, well, don't get me started on what goes on in that five-sided building, Phil.
All right, man. We're going to a break. Thanks, Spark. See you.
Okay.
He's right, though. He's absolutely right. And we'll be more right as soon as we get back. Y'all stay tuned. We are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. I mean, like, just covering down on some major ground across the northern half of the most beautiful state in the nation. This one right here, Alabama. And I mean, this show goes, wow, way down south of Birmingham, up north of Huntsville, from Tuscaloosa, back to gas parts of Georgia, Tennessee, and Mississippi, all thrown in just for good measure. A couple more texts that dropped in. John from Huntsville says, Phil, fantastic monologue, definitely one of your best. I can't wait for your book of monologue collections to come out so I can give my official grade for each monologue, because this one gets an A double plus. Thank you, brother. Says also, I can't wait for another awesome episode of Butters and Lee. John is on board, Butters. We are good to hook.
Looking forward to it.
I'm saying. Brand spanking new in the text line. Mike, who is, well, this must be, okay, I'm wondering which Mike this is, because apparently he was, well, I'm assuming that's Grissom High School class of 83, which is my class. He says, Phil, thanks for your opening comments. The climate narrative is a fraud and a money power grab must be exposed at every opportunity. Mike, GSS 83. Mike, we had a bunch of Mikes in my class. If you're from Grissom High School, tell me your last name so I'll know. But anyway, glad to have you in the text string, and we're plugging you in right now. Mark from Red Bay says, as one famous American once said, stupid is as stupid does. Well, there you have it. And Cameron from Decatur, we clarified. All good, brother. Ain't nothing to it. All right, I'm jumping right in. Dipper number 1, wars and rumors of wars. Look, I don't think that I can, and I'm not going to try and be an alarmist, but I'm going to be a realist and a pragmatist. And I like to say that I'm a pragmatic optimist, generally speaking. But there's some crap going on in the world right now that we have got to keep our eyes on. Things that can spill over, and things that are already happening that are affecting us. And I mean, look who's in the White House right now, right? So the commander-in-chief is on vacation right now again. 39% of his presidency has been spent on vacation. Meanwhile, we have what I'm calling in this dipper wars and rumors of wars. Let me just give you a rundown of some key things that could wind up having dramatic impacts upon us as a nation in the year 2024, which is, by the way, next week. I'll just kick it off with Iran. Why not? Let's talk about Iran, the elephant in the room, the one that foments all. Do you realize, by the way, I've got a stack of stuff here. I would bet that the vast majority of what we're dealing with in the world that could create a true threat to the United States and its allies stems from Iran in some capacity. They are the largest fomenter of terrorism in the world right now. They fund it, they train it, they supply it, they encourage it. In fact, they sometimes even demand it. Story here from Breitbart. If you think for a second that we're going to find a way to stop Iran from getting a nuclear device, it's only going to be because we took out the plant. It's only going to be because we have some kind of a Top Gun Maverick scenario where we actually have to see an airstrike. And by the way, don't think for a second Israel won't do it. But the U.S. better be prepared to support it, because the two nations that Iran says it wants to wipe off the face of the earth are Israel and the United States. The big Satan and the little Satan, according to them. Here's a story from Breitbart dated yesterday. The International Atomic Energy Agency reported on Tuesday that Iran had tripled its production of uranium enriched to 60% at its two plants in Natanz and Fordo. 60% enrichment is generally regarded as the last stop before hitting the weapons-grade purity of 90%. And by the way, it points out in this article, there is no peaceful use of uranium that requires 60% enrichment. Civilian nuclear reactors only require 3.6%. So the IAEA, by the way, this is not supposition. This is not somebody heard. This is the IAEA saying it themselves. They are the International Atomic Energy Agency saying that Iran has now basically increased its pace to 9 kilograms a month, which is like an exponential increase. And they are fast approaching the ability to have a nuclear device. It says Iran's stockpile of uranium was already 22 times higher than the limits that they had agreed to in the Obama agreement, even before their pace of 60% enrichment picked up. The Biden State Department is, quote, greatly concerned. Well, okay, I guess they're on the job. Iran's nuclear escalation is far more concerning, all the more concerning at a time when Iran, as well as Iran-backed militant groups and Iran's proxies, continue their dangerous and destabilizing activities in the region. Not just the region, the world. So here's the thing. 60% enrichment capability. Next step is full-on 90% enrichment capability, nuclear device capable. There is no such thing as a peaceful need for 60% enriched uranium. And on top of that, they're sitting on a huge stockpile of enriched uranium. It does not have to all be weapons grade capable for the purposes of building a nuclear device. You can build a pretty fine dirty bomb out of some of that. So all I'm saying here is Iran is something worth watching. These wars and rumors of wars, this is legit. And if you think for a second that Iran won't supply one of its radical proxies with what it needs to have a dirty bomb explosion in an allied country, a NATO country, or the United States itself, look at our southern border. How easy would it be at this point for someone to sneak across? I had a friend years ago, go ahead and look up U.S. Special Operations man-pack nukes. I had a friend years ago who was a man-pack nuke guy from the old days of special operations. When the Soviet Union, we were concerned they were going to flood across the Fulda Gap, and the whole détente was the idea of mutually assured destruction, and everybody stood and stared at each other in the Cold War. Well, it wasn't that cold. There were guys, probably on both sides, that were trained on how to infiltrate with a nuclear device strapped to their back, bury it in a key location, and detonate it from afar. Don't think for a second that can't come across our southern border. What worries me is whether maybe it already has. So yeah, there's number one on wars and rumors of wars. The UN nuclear watchdog says Iran has tripled its production of near weapon-grade uranium. That story came out yesterday. But then while we're talking about this, how many times can you get shot at before you're allowed to really, really shoot back? And I don't mean like trying to stop the bullets. I'm talking about stop the shooter. You're welcome to chip in whenever you want to here, Butters, but I'm just saying, if you're aware of where the point of origin is. So when we got mortared in Iraq, one of the first things we tried to do, aside from self-preservation, and decide whether or not there was any damage that we needed to cover down on or injuries, was to determine quickly where the point of origin was and see if we could take out the poo. They call it the poo. Find the poo. And the point of origin is where the bad guys were when they launched those mortars or lit those rockets. What are we doing right now in the Red Sea? We're just trying to shoot down those missiles before they hit us. That's it. But they keep coming. Yeah, but Phil, a few drones. Is it worth starting a war? A few drones? How about this? Story from Fox News. Dateline yesterday. The U.S. Navy shot down anti-ship ballistic missiles on Tuesday launched by incoming Iran-backed Houthi rebels in the Red Sea, signaling a significant escalation in the region, a senior defense official told Fox News. How many? How about this? We had to launch FA-18 Super Hornets from the Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group, which in one 12-hour period, shot down 12 one-way attack drones, 3 anti-ship ballistic missiles, and 2 land attack missiles. That's a significant uptick. We have shot down nearly 100 drones in the last 60 days. 100. Y'all, this is not nuisance level. These are attempts to literally do damage and create death and destruction in the Red Sea. Do you know how much of our world's shipping transfers through the Red Sea? What's the name of that strait, Butters? Do you recall?
Well, you've got the Suez Canal up there.
Suez.
And so you've got 30% of all container traffic, which they've already started diverting stuff all the way around. And you just think, I mean, the insurance costs, all the stuff. I mean, the disruption. And I'd like to point out, regardless of what drone they use, because there's a lot of drones that are, I'll say, are cheap.
Sure. Homemade.
But no matter what, I promise what we're using to shoot those things down are way more expensive than what they are. So it's not a cheap game to be playing over there.
And you and I were talking before the show, and you made the point that the first time they actually land one on a carrier,
yep,
it's going to be, of course, there's damage control to be worried about, but then there's also the PR move that they're going to launch all over the internet. Look what we did. We landed on the carrier.
Yeah, it's a game we played. Fortunately, when I was over there, we weren't really getting shot at, but it's a game you play. Hopefully they're keeping the carrier and they're not actually getting shot at the carrier, but who knows what's going on. But that's nuts. So how long do you go before you? Yeah,
how long?
I mean, I've tried to think of how do you equate it to, if you take the football analogy, if you're trying to guard the entire field of receivers versus just go tackle the daggum quarterback, just take them out. Like, why are we playing this game?
Yeah, it's got to be both. But you know what? It's got to be both.
Yeah.
Put pressure on the passer and cover down on the receiver. You got to do both. And to your point a moment ago, too, this article even says major shipping companies, including Maersk, which is one of the largest in the world, have been avoiding the Red Sea and sending their ships all the way around Africa's Cape of Good Hope and adding costs and delays by doing so. So if you think for a second this is not going to impact what you buy at the store or the cars that you purchase or anything else for that matter, or the cost of oil, or for that matter how long it takes for parts to get here so you can get something fixed, all of it. 30% of the world's trade, you said?
Yep.
30% of the world's trade's being shot at right now on a daily basis. But what are we doing? Well, we're going to keep shooting those things down. We're going to keep shooting those things down. Well, how about you go shoot the shooter? There's an idea.
Yeah.
They did shoot the shooter somewhere else, though. Now, I'll tell you about that after the break. Interesting. Was it effective? I don't know. And by the way, what exactly is a proportionate response? And why would you go proportionate? I say come in heavy. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. We are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative and just plain right. I mean, like, wow, making common sense like a superpower. Dipper number one here, wars and rumors of wars. So, yeah, aside from the Red Sea, we have been engaged on multiple occasions, on our land-based forces in Iraq and Syria. You may not be aware, but we still do have probably upwards of 2,500 U.S. troops, mostly special operations and support troops, that are working against ISIS in northern Iraq and in Syria, also assisting Kurdish forces, and having to deal with the angst of Turkey because we do. But nonetheless, we have been facing multiple attacks. We had one just the other day, a drone attack on a U.S. installation that resulted in three U.S. casualties. Two of them were wounded and returned to duty. One of them, though, was critical. Has been transported out of the country. So story here on Reuters came out 3 days ago. The U.S. military carried out retaliatory airstrikes on Monday in Iraq after a one-way drone attack by Iran-aligned militants. There's Iran again. I mean, every time we turn around, we got troops dying or having to defend themselves because of Iranian influence, all right? Left one U.S. service member in critical condition, wounded two others. The back-and-forth clash was the latest demonstration of how the Israel-Hamas war is rippling across the Middle East. It's really not. It's because Iran is intent upon destabilizing and keeping people distracted. It says Iran-aligned groups in Iraq and Syria oppose Israel's campaign in Gaza and hold the United States partly responsible. So at President Joe Biden's direction, the U.S. military carried out strikes in Iraq, killing a number of Kataib Hezbollah militants, destroying multiple facilities used by the group. I don't know what the body count was. I'm not sure what the BDA, the bomb damage assessment, was. But we're not known in the Biden administration for taking out key targets. Just saying. But it says these strikes were intended to hold accountable those elements directly responsible for attacks on coalition forces, said General Michael Kurilla, who is Central Command's commander. So, listen, we're talking about between naval and land-based forces. We have had hundreds, no kidding, hundreds of attacks. U.S. forces wounded, massive resources expended. At what point do we go and actually strike a blow that says, do it again and you'll feel it worse the next time? I mean, right now, us just knocking down their drones, all that's doing is giving them the intel on how best to attack the next time. That one didn't work. Let's try it this way next time. That one. Maybe we do three at a time. That way they can't take them all three out. They're going to, our TTPs, our tactics, techniques, and procedures, they're going to figure them out. They're going to develop their own TTPs, and they're going to wind up getting around our defenses at some point because all we're doing is swatting flies. That's all we're doing is swatting flies. And when all you do is swat flies, how about this? Close the window so the flies quit coming in. There's your plan. What you got?
Or do they already know and they're just demonstrating our weakness by continuing to do this over and over again?
There's that. You're right. They're exploiting the fact that we have an administration that is scared to really do something. Absolutely. Meanwhile, our ally, our NATO ally, Turkey, is considering whether or not it will allow Sweden to join the NATO alliance. This is the same Turkey, by the way, who just the other day excoriated Israel, called out Netanyahu, declared him a war criminal, and, oh, by the way, hates the Kurds, who are our allies in the fight against ISIS, and has launched attacks on them multiple times. So this is a threadbare relationship right now with the Erdogan government in Turkey. And once again, we're having to wait for them to decide whether they want to see NATO expanded and strengthened. Well, you know, if approved by the full assembly in Turkey, then we would agree that Sweden could join NATO. Well, all right, two issues here. One, Sweden joining NATO. There's that. Issue number two, though, is the fact that we are once again reliant upon a fairly radical organization in the form of the Erdogan government in Turkey. Wars and rumors of wars? Let me ask you this. If we wind up having an attack on a NATO ally, is Turkey really going to be there for us? Is Article 5 of the NATO Convention really going to kick in with Turkey? I don't know. Are they? Because at every single turn, it doesn't feel much like we're dealing with an ally, does it? But there's a war and a rumor of war. All right, I got several more things. We're going to clear this up after the top of the hour, so y'all stand by. Send your text in. Tell me what you're thinking about wars and rumors of wars. 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. We got plenty. You know why? Because the world is not a stable place. All the more reason to have leadership in the White House that actually makes the rest of the world sit back and go, do we do something or do we not? Well, it's the Biden administration, so heck, why not? All they'll keep doing is swatting the flies. That's the plan right now. More of this, Wars and Rumors of Wars. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, and yeah, sometimes the international. And like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 2. And stand by because at the bottom of the hour, we'll have an episode of Butters and Lee. That'll be coming up at 3:30. I got a text here from Anita from South Huntsville. Says, I keep hearing that Biden's weakness with Iran is concerning because someday one of their missiles might slip through and kill some American soldiers because then things would really escalate. Nah, Biden would check his watch as the caskets come off the plane and distract the news of more Trump indictments. Yeah, I think she nailed it. I guess the other question is, would they have to wake him up to tell him what happened? There's that. So you've got Iran. You've got the Houthis, you've got the Red Sea with the attacks on U.S. forces in land and sea. You've got, any number of things happening. And then, of course, you got the war in Gaza. And Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, is facing incredible pressure now worldwide. All of a sudden, it's like everybody forgot about October 7th. I mean, how short is the world's memory, right? October 7th was how long ago? 2 months and a week? No, 3 months, not quite 3, 2.5 months ago. You're looking at, right?
So apparently the world's memory is about a month and a half.
Apparently, just long enough to let your meal digest and then you forget what you ate, But yeah, so Netanyahu is making it very clear. We're not stopping. We're not stopping. They came into our country. They raped and pillaged. They beheaded babies. They did all these things. No, we're not stopping. We're not stopping at all. And he's got 3 points that he says has to be accomplished. That story came out December 26th, so 2 days ago. Story here on the Daily Wire. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu details his 3 keys to achieving peace. By the way, they do not involve negotiation. All right? It says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu outlined his 3 prerequisites to successful and lasting peace between Israel and the Palestinians of Gaza on Monday. The first step involves destroying the terror group Hamas. And by the way, that'll be at Israel's discretion. That won't be Hamas saying, we're done, we're through, we got nothing left. Israel will say, well, you're still out there waving the white flag, so that makes you a target. Hamas has to be destroyed. Netanyahu said Hamas's leaders have vowed to repeat the October 7th massacre again and again. That is why their destruction is the only proportional response to prevent the repeat of such horrific atrocities. Anything less guarantees more war and more bloodshed. By the way, who created the notion of proportionate response? Do you win wars with proportionate response? No. You win wars by having a disproportionate response. You win wars by making sure the other side does not have the ability to shoot back at you again. You don't win wars by going, well, they fired once, so we fired once. Well, they launched a few mortars, so we launched a few mortars. Well, no. If somebody comes at you with a knife fight, for a knife fight, you just bring a gun, right? I'm just saying disproportionate response, I got no problem with that. So, right now, the thing that's being said is that Israel is disproportionate in their response. Well, good on them. Anyway, number 1, destroy the terror group Hamas. Number 2, demilitarize Gaza. You think that's 2 separate things? It's not. I mean, you think that's one thing? It's not. It's 2. Demilitarizing Gaza is making sure that the capabilities are no longer there. Not just Hamas, the group, and its militant activists, because there are other activist groups besides Hamas. There's Islamic Jihad. There's the Free Palestinian Front, I think it is. There's several other groups. He's saying we're going to demilitarize Gaza. These tunnels, they're gone. These border smuggling areas, they're gone. The ability to wreak havoc, gone. Command and control centers for military operations, gone. Weapons capabilities, gone. And then number 3, de-radicalize Gaza. Now that one's going to be far more tenuous. I saw a story that I didn't print out for today's resources, but I just saw it earlier right before I came on the air. One of the ladies who had been held hostage for a period of time, who's now been released in Gaza, said that at no time did she feel like there were friendly Gazans and then unfriendly ones. She said the whole place is like one big Hamas family. The Hamas rebels may be the ones doing the acting, but they are supported by the people. He wants to de-radicalize, Netanyahu does, Gaza, and I think he's right. I think you have to. Now, you can't just demand people change their minds, but you can not tolerate it, and that's going to be an interesting development to see how that goes. In the meantime, wars and rumors of wars, y'all. Syed Razi Mousavi is a top military advisor to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps terrorists, or at least he was. Story on hotair.com. Israel took him out. Where was he? Pray tell, where was this senior top military advisor to the IRGC? He was in Syria. Pray tell, why was he in Syria? I'm doing pray tell again, Butters. We're going to have to start doing eggnog shots again because I'm doing pray tell too often. It still cracks me up.
I think with this topic, we're on just straight shots.
Pray tell. Line them up. Yeah. So the bottom line is Mousavi was taken out, and Israel has not denied it. They basically said, yeah, it was us. We took him out. Iran now has vowed to retaliate, saying, quote, "This act is a sign of the Zionist regime's frustration and weakness in the region, for which it will certainly pay a price." What a stupid thing to say. They're fighting a major front right now in Gaza. They're taking incoming fire from Hezbollah in Lebanon, and they still have the ability, by the way, to fly in to Syria and take out one of your dudes because they knew where he was. A sign of their weakness in the region. Sounds to me like they are willing to go wherever it takes in the region to do whatever it takes to get it done. Meanwhile, there's still a war in Ukraine. I haven't even touched China. Wars and rumors. I haven't even touched China. I haven't gone to the Far East at all. The Eastern Rim has not even been discussed yet.
Yeah, I think you've stayed in about a 800-mile bubble so far.
Well, there's a lot going on. And then there's Ukraine. I mean, that war ain't slowing down, by the way. The Russian bear is still getting defanged on a daily basis. TheHill.com, as of 2 days ago, reports Ukraine damaged a Russian ship in a Crimean airstrike. So the Crimean Peninsula, if you're not familiar with the map, picture like Texas, and it has the extension down into the Gulf of Mexico area for Texas. You can almost picture the Crimean Peninsula being like that for Ukraine. Well, it was annexed. It was taken over during the Obama administration, and nobody said boo about it. The Russians decided they wanted Crimea. They wanted those warm water ports. They were just going to make that theirs. They just took it. It was fairly bloodless, but it is still considered by the Ukrainians to be usurped territory, and the Russians are now claiming it's theirs. In the meantime, that's a long ways down. That is not next door for Ukrainian forces. But they made it next door. They got down there. Russian Defense Ministry has now confirmed that the landing ship Novocharsk docked in the Crimean city of Feodosia, which is at the Black Sea. I think it's the Black Sea. Yeah, was damaged in an airstrike, adding that 2 Ukrainian fighter jets were also shot down during the operation. Russian state media TASS reported 1 person was killed, 2 were injured, and an ammunition store was blown up during the attack. That is a World War II level fight over there right now. The battlefronts, the devastation, the trench warfare, the attrition of troops. We're hearing right now that Russian losses equate to somewhere in the neighborhood of 300,000 at this point. Can you imagine? We didn't lose 300,000? I mean, that's epic. The entire United States Army is what, 475,000, something like that? They lost 300,000? Meanwhile, last story before we go to the break. 6 more Ukrainian pilots are now training on F-16s in Denmark. So yeah, Defense One has a piece. The war in Ukraine, it's not slowing down right now. It's going to stay on. It's going to stay hot for a while. That war that was going to be over within a week is now in its second year, or about to be. 6 Ukrainian pilots are learning to fly F-16s in Denmark, the third cohort to be trained on the fighter jet since July. The pilots traveled first to the United Kingdom to hone their English skills, and then they got basic flight training in Denmark. So what we're looking at here is NATO allies are training and supplying Ukraine. The Biden administration is still the one trying to write the most checks, but there is still a war going on, and suddenly Ukraine has Abrams tanks and F-16 fighters.
Didn't we do some similar stuff prior to World War II?
Like the
supplying and supplying stuff and
we did do some of that,
munitions and all that kind of good stuff.
and then we got sucked in anyway. But that was when the Japanese decided they were going to come on over and make it our war. All right, y'all. Wars and rumors of wars. Hope I haven't depressed you. We're going to move on, and coming up in a few minutes, we'll have a chance to see what Butters and Lee think about the world around us. Y'all stay tuned. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Hey, by the way, you hear the ads playing during the break, right? Let me just tell you, you guys, Rightside Radio, we are a standalone entity. We are a business unto ourselves. Those ads you hear playing, that's because that's how we sustain operations. We're not owned by the stations that you hear us playing on. We actually send them the show. And part of the way we sustain those operations, though, is by selling ads. So think about this. We are told with all the stations that we have over 30,000 listeners a week, right? That's a lot of right-side ruffians. And if you're a right-side ruffian who sells goods and services through your own business, you might consider, here's a huge audience of people that are just like you. If you want to advertise your goods, your wares, your services to other right-side ruffians, well, the way you do it is you contact us directly. You don't call the station, you got to call us. So go to rightsideradio.org. That's our website, rightsideradio.org. Click on advertising and contact, and then just send us a message. We will get back to you right away. We'd love to talk to you about being on the team. I got to take a minute here, by the way, and address some news. We had a breaking news story right before I went on the air, and I haven't had a chance to touch it yet. So that whole thing about Trump being taken off the Colorado ballot, right? Well, so first of all, know this. The Colorado Republican Party has now appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. The Trump campaign says that they'll be joining the appeal here very shortly. I suspect somebody else is going to jump into some conservative legal advocacy group is probably going to jump in, like, Alliance Defending Freedom or something. But in a twist that I didn't see coming, the Colorado Secretary of State has said there is no plan right now to take Trump off the ballot. What? Yeah, you heard me. So Colorado Secretary of State Jenna Griswold has announced that she will include Trump on the primary ballot unless the U.S. Supreme Court affirms the lower court's ruling. Meaning, what she's saying there is, he's already on the ballot. He's already achieved all the things that our state law says he has to achieve. So the fact that the lower court wants to take him off the ballot does not mean it's going to happen yet because it's on appeal. And in the course of the appeal, she's not going to change the ballot. She's going to leave it like it is. That's a bold move, Cotton. I'm just saying. So
are we in a land of just kind of making law up or making up the interpretation of law, or is that kind of a legitimate, good on her, but is that kind of a legitimate thing to say, well, I'm not going to listen to that decision because it's on appeal? And
well, I think what she's looking at is the greater harm that could be caused by removing him from the ballot, generating the confusion that would be caused when the Supreme Court probably hears it pretty quickly. We've got right now, I think it's late next week. The end of next week, roughly, is when Thursday or Friday is when the ballots are supposed to go to print. So if the U.S. Supreme Court comes back with a ruling quicker than that, then she'll know what she's got to do no matter what. But right now, what she's saying is, I am not going to wind up dismantling our current ballot and then expending the resources to have them all reprinted for the entire state simply because it was on appeal. And I think she also, and by the way, she's not pro-Trump. She even says in her press release, Donald Trump engaged in insurrection and was disqualified under the Constitution from the Colorado ballot. Colorado Supreme Court got it right. This decision is now being appealed. I urge the U.S. Supreme Court to act quickly given the upcoming presidential primary election. But she's not taking him off the ballot until the court has done what it's going to do. Interesting. Very interesting. Anyway, we'll see where it goes. That's all out there right now. What you got?
Any chance she's or they're playing some other game? Like, is there some other angle that folks aren't seeing?
What angle would it be? I can't imagine there being an angle here. I think what she's looking at is my office's resources are limited, and I feel certain too. She acted on the advice of counsel. Do I have the authority to do this? Yes, ma'am, you do. And she's probably saying, look, why would I do this right now? Why? It's on appeal. And I think she also recognizes that the appeal has merit. I mean, when you see, so Michigan, by the way, Michigan threw the case out. So right now, Michigan, New Hampshire, Minnesota, and one other, maybe Kansas, I think it's Kansas, have all rejected these same lawsuits. And it's not likely that the Supreme Court is going to just go, well, Colorado's the only one that got it right. But you still got it pending in, I think, Oregon and Maine. So Oregon and Maine are still pending. Colorado right now is the only state that went, well, we just think he committed an act of insurrection. Therefore, we're taking him off the ballot. Trump. It's unreal, man.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. Y'all text in how you feel about it, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. In the meantime, Trump stays on the ballot, which he's going to stay on the ballot, in my opinion. I mean, I cannot imagine the Supremes going, I think what we ought to do is really muddy the waters by just letting this stand and affirming the lower court. But I don't know how the Supremes can also not take this up because the question is one of an interpretation of the U.S. Constitution. There's a question of federal law. And it's a question of diverse rulings in multiple states, which makes it a diversity issue of conflicts of laws. I say they take it up. We'll see. The appeal is in. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Coming up next, Butters and Lee. You are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the northern half of the most beautiful state in the nation. This one right here, Alabama. Y'all, I'm talking about this show goes like way down south of Birmingham, up north of Huntsville, Tuscaloosa, back to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, and even Mississippi, all thrown in just for good measure. All right, hey, listen, lots going on in the world, but we got to pause for a moment and see what other people think than just besides me. So this is where we bring in the two of the folks who just make things click, right? They make things run. One of whom you hear quite often, Butters, is on the board. Right, bro? You ready to go?
Oh, yes.
And then calling in right now to round out the trio of us is our friend Lee from Huntsville. Hey, Lee, how you doing?
I'm great. Hope you had a great holiday.
We did. Christmas was good. In fact, Christmas is still going at my house. The grandkids just pretty much got here, so we're just getting started at my house.
Fun.
All right, well, listen, the two of you are in place and saddled up and ready to go, so I pronounce it time for Butters and Lee. All right, here we go. First question. Imagine this, which means all you got to do is watch the news. You're on the road, like to catch a flight, all right? So let's say you're on the road to catch a flight. You're already running late. You're going to miss your flight. Suddenly you find the road is blocked by a group of pro-Palestinian activists. What do you do? I'm going to Lee first. This is going to be good. Lee, what do you do? They're blocking your access to the airport. What are you going to do?
I love how you say it's going to be good. Like I'm going to be outrageous. After calling the police, demanding they come have them all arrested and moved out of the road, I'm calling the airlines because I'm probably going to have to reschedule my flight. I'm not running over anyone in the road. Even if my deepest urge is to do so. But, I mean, I'd hit someone in my car if I thought they were going to hurt me, if they were bashing my windows, if they were climbing on my car, something like that. Yeah, I'm going to try to get away.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. But if it's people sitting in the road like idiots, I mean, what can you do?
Okay, what if I saw? Okay, now you know what? I'm not gonna poison the well. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna flip over here to Butters, and then we're gonna digest some of what y'all just said. What you got, man? What are you gonna do?
I think I might disappoint you a little bit, but
disappoint me?
Yeah. So
are y'all just so bland today?
So yes, if you find yourself in that situation, if I find myself and I feel threatened, I'll do what's necessary.
Sure.
Right. So including plowing right over anybody that wants to play that game.
I'm for that.
But back up and figure out the assessment. Try to see it before you don't put yourself in that position as best you can. It's if those people want to be idiots, but yeah, I mean, especially in this day and age, I mean, God forbid if you actually, hurt somebody in that, and you can't justify it. Like, I mean, that's some life-ending stuff, all because a bunch of idiots are out there, super gluing themselves.
Let me clarify the scenario. I am not picturing y'all barreling through a crowd with bodies flying off your windshield. That was not the question.
You go slow, but
I mean, you guys are having to use windshield wipers just to get the blood and the brains off of your car as you move through the zombie apocalypse here. This is all right. I'm talking about like there's just a line of them standing there holding hands, chanting and waving their Palestinian flags. Would you just edge forward until they had no choice but to yield, or would you just sit there? I'll be honest with you.
I mean,
what?
Everybody's got a phone. And someone's going to fall over as if you struck them hard. I mean, it's just not worth the risk.
So I am.
Do you know how expensive attorneys are, Phil?
Yeah, really, Phil.
I do. Would y'all like a card?
Yeah.
So
you do some pro bono for Butters and I?
Well, I would. It's the friend and family rate at the very least. But I am. I'll be honest with you. I'm of the mind. First of all, you're both correct. Charlene and I have talked about this, and I've even told her, baby, if you're out there somewhere and people are gathering around your car, banging on it, your car is bigger than them. Don't open the doors, don't roll the windows down, and don't stop. Just go ahead. If you feel threatened, get out of there. And do what you got to do. And if it means you got to move a few of them through and maybe run a few of them down, then I would much rather have her at home with me safe figuring out our legals than I would to have to explain to the kids why a crowd took her out. That being said, I'm of the mind that these knuckleheads are standing in the road, and if it's a manageable situation, I'm not like a thick crowd where there's nothing I can do. But if they're just standing there and they're telling me to stop and I'm not allowed to go through an intersection, I'm going through the intersection. I'm going to keep edging forward and let them understand that the weight of my car is bigger than the weight of their jacket, and I'm gonna move right on through. That's me. That's just me. That's my thought right now.
What if they're glued like some of these crazies have done?
Yeah, well, if they're glued, I mean, we can keep creating new scenarios, and by the way, they can create new scenarios, but I don't know. I mean, at that point, what do? They're glued to the road. I'm probably sitting there. I'm probably one of the ones who's standing outside my car, calling them a few names and trying to remember my faith. But right now, if they're just standing in the road, like a video that I saw earlier this morning when I thought of the question, and people just go, no, I got somewhere to be, I would just kind of keep edging forward and make them move. What kind of glue do they use, by the way, to glue themselves to a road? I've seen them having to actually use saws to cut the concrete and get their hands off the road.
I don't know. Based on the
Super
potholes we've got around here, maybe they ought to, send that suggestion in to some of our road personnel.
Okay, so y'all are far tamer than I thought you were. I am interested by this. Okay, so here's the next question I got for you. Totally different subject. So, state of California, whoop whoop. State of California has a new law taking effect first of the year, raising the minimum wage for fast food employees to $20 per hour. The minimum wage, $20 per hour to flip a burger or deliver a pizza. So Pizza Hut responded just this week by laying off 1,200 delivery drivers. 1,200. 1,200 people lost their jobs. Where's the fine line on the minimum age argument? What is the reasonable solution to the claim that we're not letting people have a working wage, a living wage? We've got to pay them more in a fast food environment. Where do you fall on this thing? Butters, you first this time.
Basic economics is going to win out. Supply and demand, capitalism, even as much as you try to regulate it. So you're already seeing kiosks that are popping up everywhere. Fine. We just won't have an employee now. All of a sudden, cost benefit analysis.
Kiosk, the electronic kiosk.
Yeah, we'll build a machine that you can go hit your button and pick your burgers and your pizza and your toppings, and we'll move on.
And we'll have 2 employees in the back.
Right. And so, the basic economics, it's going to win out. You can't regulate. And unfortunately, people are too dumb, it would seem, to figure out that if you just keep raising the minimum, like the business owners, Pizza Hut isn't going to lose money because of that out of the kindness of their heart, nor should we expect them to. They still need to make a profit. So guess what? They're just going to raise the cost of their pizzas, and it's going to be expensive for everybody else.
Or just lose employees.
Don't understand. Right. Or it's still going to get more expensive no matter what.
That's true.
It's just going to get more expensive. Either they're going to replace it with technology, self-driving cars, quadcopters that deliver, pizza, whatever it is, they'll solve the problem because they're a business and people innovate, and that's a great thing. But you're also going to make it less likely that somebody's going to get a good story of their first job as a teenager, going out delivering pizzas. You're just going to make it harder because the job's not going to be there. All
right, Lee, where do you fall on this? What is the argument to be made for minimum age or minimum wage requirements that is reasonable in scope? I mean, how do you work this? What do you go with this? $20 an hour. Wow.
You say wow, but personally, I tend to think there really isn't a need for minimum wage, but I see the arguments for and against it. I think the market will really honestly dictate. My teenager makes $13 an hour working at a small retail place, and there's some that are paying up to 15, and this is entry level jobs, and that's here. So don't tell me that they aren't already paying 20 all over California. $20 an hour. I'm just saying, people listen to that and they go, "Oh my God, $20 an hour." That's honestly, a lot of people are already making that there. You can't hardly get people to come to work for less than $15 an hour in some sectors. Okay, you just can't get them to show up because they won't. So it's not as much money as you think. But here's the problem: is when you start dictating, it messes with their business models. And I don't know if delivery people make the same as, say, wait staff, where it's a much less rate, and your business is heavily funded by tips, and they also get a gas allowance, et cetera. So what they're going to do is lay off all those people and probably use someone like DoorDash or something like that, where now you're going to have to pay a higher fee to get your pizza.
Yeah.
I just think the market will bear out if you let it. And this type of interference does nothing but cost jobs, and it sends companies fleeing from California. So if they just instituted where illegal aliens get health care. Who do they think is going to pay for that if they're running businesses and people out of California? They're stupid.
Well, and I agree with all of that. Both of y'all nailed it. Here's one piece that I would add to it, though. I think it's part of the dumbing down of America. It was I don't recall ever a time in my growing up that fast food was a career path, unless you were working to be an owner or a manager, right? I mean, I knew guys, like my first gig was working for Chick-fil-A. I knew guys who worked at Chick-fil-A and then earned the right to become a manager. Very cool. I knew guys that worked at Chick-fil-A and then their family decided to buy a franchise. I did. But for the vast majority of us, Chick-fil-A was that after-school job. It was that thing that, kids did in the summertime. It was that thing that, someone, and you looked at the adult who might be working in the fast food environment, flipping burgers, and you think, are y'all between jobs? Or are you just trying to supplement your income? But it was never designed to be a career path. And the idea that we have to promote a living wage among something that was never determined in the past to be a living career, I just see that as the dumbing down of America.
You shouldn't be raising a family on entry level, Chick-fil-A wages. That's for people who, individuals who are trying to, in college or in high school or whatever. Can I suggest that they apply at Buc-ee's? I don't know if you guys ever seen the thing outside talking about how much they make at Buc-ee's. I genuinely considered, should I quit my job and join Buc-ee's?
I'm not sure why I went to law school. I could have been a Buc-ee's manager and
exactly.
and just have my picture made with the Buc-ee's beaver every day and just love it. Wow.
You ain't wrong.
Yeah,
you ain't wrong.
And by the way, that is also a capitalistic choice that they made.
Amen.
And look at them. All right, round one, Butters and Lee. We're going to take a break. We'll come right back, and this is the part where we flip the script, and they ask me a question, and I just wait with bated breath to find out what it is. All right, folks, Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, Butters and Lee. We'll be right back. We're back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. I mean, like saving the world one soundbite at a time. Hey, we're back for round two of Butters and Lee, and this is where we flip the script, and they asked me a question. So I think I went to Lee first before, so I'm going to you first, Butters. You got a question for me? What you got?
So
he checks his notes. You have notes.
Trying to keep it short and sweet to the point of what you were talking about with Iran, and all the trouble that's being caused. What's worse for us as Americans, as a stable world, the threat of what they might do, or them actually doing stuff? You talked about bringing a dirty bomb into the U.S. and all that. What's more destabilizing, or what achieves their objective more, that or actually pulling the trigger on that, or the threat that they might?
I think it's going to be a yes and a yes. So here's the thing. I say that because, number one, the number one tool of terrorism is terror, and they are the number one exporter and fomenter of terror around the world. So I would say that they love the idea of us living in fear, because living in fear creates inactivity. And it generates an environment where they feel emboldened and empowered, and to some degree even set free to do what they want to do, because fear can become a dominant. Look back at the COVID pandemic. Fear can become a dominating force if it's allowed to do so. So I think that them continuing to have the ability to create fear in the world is exactly what they want. I don't know that the Iranian government is as stable as the world is concerned that they might be. I think they're somewhat unstable. I think that they have problems on their own streets, so to speak, and I think they also have serious issues in their own economy. I don't know if they can sustain an all-out war with true NATO allies, the United States alone, for that matter. But the human factor of what they could do is to me, it's hard to say that it'd be worse to live in fear. I don't want to. I don't want to live in fear. We can't live in fear. We have to have strong leadership. But if they were to actually conduct one of those attacks you just mentioned, a dirty bomb in Washington, D.C., that's massive, and that will also destabilize the world and cause a huge loss of life. So it's a bit of a yes and a yes, bro. I get your question okay?
Yeah.
All right. Lee, what question do you have for Mwa?
Okay, so I've noticed that several high-profile people, such as Zuckerberg, even Joe Biden, have been building bunkers. They're building a bunker at Joe Biden's house in Delaware. Yeah, apparently. From what I've read, take it with a grain of salt. The government's building it. We're building it. Thank you, taxpayers. And as Mark Zuckerberg, where I think maybe this is on Hawaii, wherever he has that big estate, is building a huge bunker, or has built. And this has all happened in 2023. So you think it's time for us to get our shovels and start digging? Do they know something we don't?
First of all, they have the money, so therefore they can. There's that.
Right.
And I think if I had the money of a Zuckerberg, I'd build one just because I could, or I'd at least have some capability that I don't have right now. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm not what I would call a full-on prepper, but I'm a firm believer in having. Let's just say I have some set-asides, if you know what I mean. I have some things that are already prepared and sitting there ready. I have X amount of my chosen, calibers that are stored at the house. I have, bottom line is, I've got some sustainability that does not require me to be reliant upon the usual supply chains. But I'm not a full prepper, and I don't have a bunker. Is it time? When is it not time? I would say everybody needs to have their go bag at all times, have their family plans ready so you know where to meet in case you get separated. What do you do if the communication grid goes down? How do you find each other again? How do you get to point A to point B? Do you have the medicines that you need? Can you get clean water, which is the number one thing you're going to have? Have your plans. Have those things in place. And if we could afford to build Zuckerberg bunkers, heck, why not? Not because we have to, but because we can.
Do you think this is signaling, though, that they think something is in the wind?
Do I? I don't know how to answer that except to say I think something's almost always in the wind. I mean, so I think that Joe Biden, as much as I think he's a skull full of mush, he still knows things we don't know. And I think that
Right.
Mark Zuckerberg, because he's a billionaire, I think he also lives paranoid, to be honest with you. I think he's got a little bit of I'm a billionaire paranoia thing.
It'd be hard not to.
Yeah, there's that. Lee from Huntsville, you have an amazing new year in case we don't talk to you between now and then.
You guys as well.
All right, we'll love you. We'll see you later. All right, there it is. Butters and Lee coming up next. I got a whole round of jackassery. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Right Side Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Right Side studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international, and oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, we're moving to number 2 of the Triple Dipper. This is a segment that we call Jackassery, and right before I do that, I'm going to grab a few text messages so I can stay caught up on those. Let me see what we got over here. Text messages. Dave from Madison. This is, I got to think back to what this was. Oh, this is regarding the Colorado Secretary of State, letting Trump stay on the ballot. Says, her playing a game or prolonging removing his name is my concern as well. What I'm also concerned is that all the other states threatening to remove him will do so closer to the election, preventing the Trump campaign from appealing in time for the election itself. So right now, the majority of the states who have these ongoing actions have already dismissed the cases. We do have pending decisions necessary in both Oregon and Maine. Colorado made its decision, which is being appealed. I think what's going to happen is this, Dave. I think the U.S. Supreme Court is going to step in and say, you can't do it based on the things you're saying, because it would require yada, yada, not the least of which is a conviction of insurrection as opposed to an allegation. So that being said, if the Supremes will come in and provide a national base of clarity, I think all these cases are mooted out at that point, and even Colorado. So if the Supremes act, what I'm saying is your fears should be overridden, because that won't happen. John from Harvest says, as Thomas Sowell says, the real minimum wage is 0. Interesting. John, by the way, Thomas Sowell is one of my favorites. Just amazing. What a mind. Ryan from Hazel Green says, Phil, maintain the speed limit. The protesters get out of the way. On second thought, they're pretty stupid. You better stop. Jeff from Indiana on the minimum wage discussion says, the minimum wage should be unconstitutional because it interferes with free commerce. The price of labor should be what anyone is willing to work for, and if you can't find someone to work for that wage, you have to pay more. If there's a minimum, how come there's no maximum?
Don't give them any ideas.
That's interesting. Roger from Ardmore says, Highway 53 Burger Joint in Fayetteville, Tennessee has a robot that brings your food to the table.
I believe Tesla just unveiled version 2 of their robot. Yeah.
Oh,
Why not?
They have the Android robot. I mean, the kind that walks around the room and talks to you and looks like iRobot kind of stuff.
How are we got little micro R2D2s that are vacuuming up our homes. How come that just doesn't scale up and you put a tray on top of it and bring me my food?
They've already got one in the New York City subways. I forgot what its name is, but it patrols and watches for crime and reports things.
I'm gonna enjoy a lot more Chick-fil-A when it comes to that, because I'm sure they'll still pay people to tell me it's their pleasure.
And you know what? Rightfully so. Badger from Athens says the only people who benefit from a forced minimum wage increase are the first group of people who get the bump. After businesses have to adjust their costs, we all end up back in the same place, and those who were over minimum wage and didn't get the bump all suffer, and we'll all be worse off. Yep, and they'll unionize. There you go. Fast food workers unionize. Whoop, whoop. Raven from Russellville says, with regards to, I think he's talking about the world events we talked about earlier with Iran and all that. He says, speed, surprise, and violence of action. Works every time, Colonel. You and I have both seen it done. Yes, we have. Be nice if we had a commander-in-chief, wouldn't it? Yeah, right now we got a commander-in-thief. By the way, I coined that phrase earlier today, and it caught myself. I thought, that was interesting. I might need to write a monologue on the commander-in-thief.
Yes.
All right, so number 2, Triple Dipper. There is a sound effect that we love. It is the sound effect that clearly indicates that we have arrived at some point in which a public policy, a elected official, a regulatory burden, or a law passed is nothing but a batch of jackassery. Here's one for you. Now, I pulled this to the top of the stack on purpose, Because a little while ago, I did the breaking news thing about state of Colorado, right? State of Colorado taking Trump off the ballot. Do you recall? I'm talking to Butters, but I'm talking to all of you. Do you recall right after Colorado made his decision that President Biden was asked about it, and his response was, "I got no problem with them taking him off the ballot," or something to that effect? Okay.
Yeah.
Did you know? Story on the Daily Caller, that the Biden administration has sanctioned foreign governments on multiple occasions for that very thing, taking people off the ballot, calling it unfair election processes, election meddling. Story on the Daily Caller dated December 25th, Christmas Day. The Biden administration has enacted or threatened sanctions against foreign nations who have kicked opposition candidates off the ballot, leading some to question the Colorado Supreme Court's ruling this week. I would really question Biden himself. Hey, Mr. President, if you did it in Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Belarus, why are you okay with it here? Oh, because you're the one who's running. Gotcha. Thank you, sir. Next question. Points out Venezuela, a socialist dictatorship in Central America, was sanctioned by the Trump administration for undemocratic practices. The Biden administration started to lift those sanctions in October, but decided to leave them on because Nicolas Maduro's political opponents were complaining of unfair balloting. Says failure to abide by the terms of the agreement would lead the United States to reconsider steps we have taken, including the easing of sanctions, said the State Department. And then less than a month later, yeah, you guessed it, Nicaragua, a nation under dictatorship in Central America, had its government hit with sanctions from the Biden administration in 2021. The Biden administration explained they were imposing sanctions against Nicaragua because of its 2021 sham election, as the country's government removed most of the President Daniel Ortega's political opponents from the ballot. Funny how that works out. How about, oh, by the way, Belarus? A country in Eastern Europe with close ties to Russia was hit with sanctions by the Trump administration in 2020 for fraudulent elections by barring political opponents. The Biden administration upheld those sanctions and castigated Belarus in 2021 for holding illegitimate elections by preventing, quote, multiple opposition candidates from appearing on the ballot. Hit me some jackassery, if you would. If it's good for the goose, just saying.
So what happens when we get sanctioned?
Do we sanction ourselves now?
Maybe.
Maybe we sanction the state of Colorado. There you go. Colorado, no marijuana for you for 1 week. Go to your rooms. Sometimes I slay me. Okay, next one. You ready? If you missed my monologue at the beginning of the show, I encourage you to go find it on the podcast. By the way, the podcast has got to be hitting close to 200,000 by now. But we need to check on that. Anyway, I talked about the COP. The COP being the Convention on Climate Change run by the United Nations every year. This year was COP28. COP28 was big doings. They held it in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. Our delegation from the United States included a very robust delegation from none other than the Department of Defense.
Oh, sorry, that wasn't.
You're not even waiting. You're just jumping right in with the jackassery. So let me ask you a question. Butters, in your opinion, is the Department of Defense, is it wise spending of our tax dollars to send senior members, undersecretaries, deputy secretaries to Dubai to talk about the existential threat of climate change?
No, but I understand why they did it.
Tell me why they did it.
Because the commander-in-chief has set a precedent by saying, and set priorities by saying that it is the number one national threat or national security threat. And words have meaning.
It's not just that, it's an existential threat.
Yes. And so as much as I'd want to get angry, and obviously there are, when you're talking secretaries and appointees, but the dudes in uniform, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what the boss says, and you got to do the best you can with the ridiculousness of what your boss says.
Congress has got to get a hold of this, though, and the voters have got to change this out in 2024. But here's the thing. Here's one of the things that bothers me about this, too. Not only is it a ridiculous statement to say that in fact, where is it right here? Story from Defense One literally says, quote, the National Security Strategy and the 2022 National Defense Strategy explicitly address the national security threat posed by climate change. It labels it as this as being the decisive decade for action and calls the climate crisis the existential challenge of our time. All right, that's it. The Department of Defense, we don't have anything to do with Houthis. We don't need to worry about things like Iran and the war going on in Gaza and whether or not it's going to spill over. And then there's a whole thing about Ukraine. Oh, by the way, Russia. And what's China doing in the South China Sea? And never mind the fact that, North Korea is never stable. Let's just go ahead and make sure that we talk about climate change and spend a lot of money sending our deputy secretaries and undersecretaries and uniformed personnel over to Dubai to embarrass ourselves at the altar of climate change. On top of that is this. Every member of the armed forces, or those who are appointed to the cabinet level positions that they're in, are required to swear an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. I would love to believe that somewhere in there it means you do not align yourselves, therefore, with organizations or events that malign the United States or that create a burden upon the United States. For instance, the Blaze just came out, blaze.com, just came out with an article that came out yesterday afternoon. COP28, that's the conference where our DOD officials were at, blames colonial powers and white supremacy for this climate crisis. Well, now I understand. Not only are we a petrostate, according to the radicals that were there, but we are also part of the colonial powers and white supremacy issues that created climate change in the first place. And yet we're sending our DOD personnel. Can I have some jackassery, please? That is so incredibly worthy of jackassery. My gosh.
I don't have a problem if you want to have a separate conversation and go, even if you want to go so far as to say, I think that climate change is what's going to end America. If you want to say that, but when a commander-in-chief says this is the existential threat, you put it in the list of priorities, then that's where you go wrong. Now, I disagree if you said that's what's going to end our country, but it's not. I mean, and that's also, it speaks to a complete lack of understanding of how our government works, how our military works, what the heck is your job?
Yeah. And oh, by the way, the DOD does have a lane.
Yeah.
Allow them to work their lane.
Yeah.
And don't create new fabricated imaginations that also help you push your liberal agenda. That's what's happening here.
Yeah.
The DOD is constantly being used as a petri dish for experimentation. And this is another classic example.
The job of turning people into hair, teeth, and eyeballs.
Whoop, whoop.
That's it.
I'm just saying. All right. On that note, we're going to take a break right now. We'll come right back from that one. I got more of this. Jackassery. I mean, I got layers of jackassery here. Jackassery that's going to just make your hair curl. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. We are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Hey, by the way, I got to tell you something about our friends at the Elm Foundation. Elm, E-L-M, the Elm Foundation. Y'all, they're based out of Huntsville. They're a 501c3 that's doing amazing work to change people's lives. And I don't mean like a little bit. I mean like, wow, they are doing some amazing stuff. And they do it with what I would call conservative principles. They're not just slinging money at stuff and seeing if it works. They're not getting into liberal policies and all kinds of agenda items. No, what they're doing is they're getting people off the streets. They're helping them to regain their self-worth and their dignity through hard work and developing milestones, having an action plan, and getting them re-engaged in life. They're literally changing people's lives by bringing them back into a place of productivity. They're providing accountability. They're walking them through it. They're not just cutting them loose saying, good luck to you. And they're giving them the assets they might need, the resources available to them. Y'all, the Elm Foundation is doing some cool stuff. I had them here in the studio. We did a full hour-long interview a while back, and it was just so good. And I would encourage you to check them out. Their website is Elm Foundation, so it's Elm HSV, ELMHSV, because they're in Huntsville, .org. elmhsv.org, and take a look at what they're doing, and consider this too, by the way. It's the year end, and they are a 501c3. Some of y'all may be considering, where do I put my charitable contributions? What can I support that's doing good stuff? Elm Foundation, one idea for you. Check them out, elmhsv.org, the Elm Foundation. Tell them you heard about it on the right side, too, by the way. I am doing jackassery right now. Boy, have I got some. Here's a piece from Fox News. Story came out yesterday. The Biden anti-consumer crusade targets four more types of appliances. Woo, yeah. I mean, climate change is the existential threat of our time. It is something that even our Department of Defense has to take part in. So why don't we just change everybody's lives? Now, you've heard some of this stuff. We've got the ability for, them to regulate anything, I guess. They're just enacting laws by fiat, like dishwashers. Did you know about dishwashers? Yeah, they can kill the environment. So dishwashers, it says in the story on Fox, may already be the most overregulated appliance. They've been subjected to 4 rounds of successively tighter limits on the amount of energy and water they can use. So much so that people are beginning to wonder why they don't just wash them by hand again. There's that. Air conditioners. Air conditioners. Part of living in the first world is air conditioning. When you live in the South, air conditioning. Residential central air conditioners are being hit by regulations from both the Department of Energy and the EPA. The cumulative impact is large and is still growing. A new Department of Energy efficiency standard that took effect in 2023 is boosting the installed cost of a new unit by another $1,000. They don't care. They could care less. You know why? Because they don't pay for theirs. If the air goes out at the Department of Energy, what do? Call maintenance. They'll fix it. I mean,
if you want to know how to get a bunch of Southerners to take up arms, get rid of their air conditioning.
Woo! Just saying.
Just warning.
How about washing machines? Like dishwashers, washing machines have endured tighter and tighter water and energy use limits. They now use so little water that homeowners have had to improvise to get their clothes clean. Some have even learned to add a bucket or two of water. I didn't know. That's brilliant. Add a bucket of water to your washing machine just to get more water in there to clean your clothes. But why should you do that? Anyway, there's a risk avoiding the warranty by tinkering with the machines to increase the flows. Mold accumulation, and by the way, this is real. Mold accumulation, which was never a problem before Washington regulators got involved, is now common and can cause bad odors in stadium clothes. At my house, we got a new washer and dryer a few years ago, and we wound up we have to leave the lid to the washer open so that it airs out. Otherwise, it gets mildew smell in there in a heartbeat. It's ridiculous.
Come on, Phil.
And then there's furnaces. Furnaces. You want to stay warm? You got to pay more. Why? New regulations. I'm not done with this. Hit me some jackassery. We got to go to a break. to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the northern half of the most beautiful state in the nation. This one right here, Alabama. Y'all, I'm talking about this show goes like way down south of Birmingham, up north of Huntsville, Tuscaloosa, back to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, and even Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. Hey, I'll tell you who else covers a lot of ground, by the way, is Southern Immediate Care. Southern Immediate Care, a chain of clinics that covers a huge swath of our listening area and is growing, by the way. Southern Immediate Care with locations in places like Gadsden, Anniston, Atala, 6 locations now around the Birmingham area. I hear they're expanding even further. Y'all check them out, Southern Immediate Care. Y'all, they're open 7 days a week. They are able to see all ages. I always say it's like geriatric back down to pediatric. They can see all of them. And this is who I use personally. Yes, it is. And not because they advertise on the show. In fact, they advertise on the show because I was already using them and I was so impressed. I asked them, would you consider? And they said, yep, we will. You know why? Because the owner of the chain is a right side ruffian. Yeah. So yeah, Southern Immediate Care, every time I have walked in the front door, it's always been clean, professional, friendly, get you in, get you out. You can get your shots, your x-rays right there on the spot. You just check them out. Southern Immediate Care. Find the location nearest to you. You can see them 7 days a week. And tell them, by the way, that you heard about it on Rightside Radio. I would appreciate that very much. Got a few text messages. Let me grab those real quick. Shane from Athens said, I do not look forward to Skynet becoming self-aware. I think that was one of the scariest lines of any movie. And on that date, Skynet became self-aware. And it determined that we were the enemy. That's a very scary line when you consider the level of AI that we're moving into now. Just saying.
Yeah, it's oof.
Yeah, just it does cause one to pause, doesn't it? John C. from Madison. John C. from Madison says, I heard that Trump's back on the ballot in Colorado. Is that true? It is. Yes, it is. In fact, what's happened is he was not taken off the ballot, John. So the Colorado Supreme Court has ruled. That's the state Supreme Court has ruled, and it is now being appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. The Secretary of State for Colorado came out today and said, until the court has determined one way or the other what it's going to do, the Supremes, I'm not taking Trump off the ballot. In other words, I got a job to do, and while I may hate Trump, because she was very clear about the fact she hates Trump, while I may hate Trump, I can't just take him off the ballot and add him back again the next week. So the Secretary of State is saying he's not truly off until the legal processes have finished themselves. So interesting piece. Bev from Madison says, Mr. Phil, question please, is there really such thing as a citizen's arrest? If yes, what is the process, and does it apply to just state law or also federal? Okay, it varies state by state. I can't give you the specifics as I don't know that I've looked into that, and I can't remember when. I mean, you always hear about, Barney Fife, citizens arrest, citizens arrest. Here's what I would suggest. First of all, always call actual law enforcement. If you cannot do any, if there is nothing that can be done, if you have no other recourse, and you feel like you need to stop someone from doing harm to another, then I understand. There you go. If you feel like you need to intervene in such a way as to prevent loss of life, limb, or property, then there's that. There's also the Castle Doctrine that says you have a right to defend your own home, your office, your car. As for a citizen's arrest, like going out, finding someone, and just detaining them, don't misunderstand that to mean you can become law enforcement on your own. Because what you can quickly do is get into a case of negligence or recklessness where you can be sued civilly at the very least. Or for that matter, you may wind up impeding an otherwise lawful investigation by the police who you didn't realize were on their way or were doing something of their own. So Bev, I'm not sure I'm really answering your question. If you saw someone coming through the door of your house and you knocked them down and held them there until police arrived, that is technically a citizen detaining someone else, and you can do it. But don't think that means that you get to go out and just patrol the streets. You've got things like community watch where you drive around. But the first line of defense is always call law enforcement.
And I would think there's the law, and then there's the, if you're protecting property, private property can be replaced, so think about the consequences. Even if it's legal, you put your life at jeopardy, that's some pretty extreme circumstances.
Yeah, and Bev, I think we'd also need to know what your circumstances are. And your question about does it apply to state law or federal, we're talking about, there's no jurisdictional requirement for you to protect your home. But I would caution you, and the situation is going to dictate to some degree. Glenn from Bluntsville says, break stuff and kill bad guys. That's a nice way of saying it. He's talking about the military. What's the military for? To break stuff and kill bad guys.
Mm-hmm. When called upon and needed by the American people.
That's right. Win wars. Mark from Tony says climate change is a power grab by the Biden clan. I do not disagree, which leads me right back to jackassery. Let me finish up some stuff here I got. Here's one from Breitbart. Jackassery. 8 times that the Biden administration pushed a transgender agenda on children. Pushed it on children. Like for one, Biden's Pride Month proclamation. Biden's proclamation on lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex Pride Month claimed the nation is at an inflection point as it faces state-level laws to protect children. These, according to Biden's proclamation, are hateful. That would be Alabama being one. The Biden Department of Justice is fighting Alabama in court over our legislation to protect children from transgender surgeries. Hit it, man. Go right ahead. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Just whipping that donkey with a stick.
Wait.
Jackassery.
Let me make sure I'm getting this straight. Our federal tax dollars are fighting our state tax dollars.
Yes. At every turn. It's like the state of Texas trying to stem the tide at its borders, and at every turn, what happens? The federal government under the Biden administration sues the state of Texas to make them stop doing what it's not doing. State dollars are having to defend against federal dollars. How about this? When the Biden administration said they're all our kids. It says Biden released a pride clip on social media, which he stated that the LGBTQ plus children were inexplicably all our kids. No, sir. No, they are not. Doesn't matter how many times you smell their hair, they are not. How about this? When Biden's topless LGBTQ White House celebration, remember this? During Pride Month, Biden hosted what was considered to be the largest so-called Pride Month celebration in history at the White House. Replaced the American flags with rainbow flags. That was nauseating. And then had a quote-unquote family-friendly LGBTQ event, which was overshadowed by transgender activists who bared their topless chests and took pictures for social media on the White House lawn. There you go. How about the Summer of Pride? Keep in mind that Biden's transgender Assistant Secretary for Health and Human Services is Admiral Rachel Levine. Admiral. Don't you know he, the dude who thinks he's a woman, earned the rank of Admiral by being the Assistant Secretary for Health and Human Services. This same Levine is a man who believes he's a woman, who pushed doctors and pediatricians to be proactive ambassadors for their transgender agenda. And then went on to also, in number 5, declare that surgically enhanced puberty blockers and surgeries on minors were medically necessary. And I could go on, but I'm just tired of it, so please hit me some transgender jackassery. Wow. Here is one more before I take the phone call. One more if I take the phone call. What time we got? Here we go. Okay, we're good. I'm not sure why this passes the smell test when it comes to the legal standards that we like to call a burden upon interstate commerce. You can't have one state declare that a product of universal application has to be done this way in its state and nowhere else, meaning it has just required an industry to redo its entire standards for that one state. Never mind, it involves climate change, so it's all okay. Washington, that's the state of Washington. Washington Democrats are looking to make tires more expensive for consumers in an effort to battle climate change. The state's Department of Commerce is now requesting the Democrat-controlled legislature give that agency the authority to regulate tire efficiencies. And what they want are what is known as low rolling resistance tires, meaning less friction on the road. I guess the 33s on my Jeep are not welcome in the state of Washington.
You should ask Jeff about Jeff from Indiana, the trucking industry, about low rolling resistance. But that's interesting there.
Yeah.
I think it's time to go open up a tire shop in Idaho or possibly even Oregon.
You know, 2nd Infantry Division and the 2nd Ranger Battalion are both stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington. I've been out there. I've seen some of the vehicles those Joes drive around. Pretty sure they don't qualify for low resistance. It does point out, though, this is also the same state that recently passed legislation to actually put residents in jail for using gas-powered landscaping tools like leaf blowers. Hit me some jackassery before I bring the phone on. Good Lord. Those are all official policies, positions, regulations happening in the public sector, and they are jackassery. Jeff from Indiana's on line 1. Jeffro, how do you feel about jackassery, man?
We have a jackassery cackristocracy. Pretty much all you can say.
It is true, brother. It is absolutely true. Cacistocracy, a government led by the least competent of its citizens. It's unbelievable.
And they're showing that they're not even competent to even to be the least competent. I don't think. My gosh, every village is missing an idiot. They all went to the Biden administration, I think.
Well, what do you think about the state of Washington giving you the requirement if you were trucking through Washington, you'd have to have regulated tire efficiency at the state level?
Oh my! Well, I guess that's okay as long as you got enough tire on the road to grip it. So,
well, I don't know that they would. It'd certainly make your trip more expensive. But there went all those retreads you truckers love.
Oh yeah. Well, I've cussed those so many times that it ain't funny, especially when they're super singles and they go boom, and they go boom big time.
Brother, I've been next to them when they go boom, and I thought I hit an IED in Baghdad again. It was rough.
Probably more powerful.
What else is on your mind?
Hey, how about the jackassery of the media? I don't like Haley. But as a presidential thing, but the question she got the other day about the Civil War and everything, I thought that was just over the top.
Yeah, I look at it and think, why is that a question for a presidential candidate for something that happened 150 years ago? That's not even a serious question at that point.
Well, the thing about it is at the time of the Civil War, there was 31 million Americans. Over 600,000 people died in the Civil War, not counting all the injuries and stuff and everything. Do you think, and everybody thinks was about slavery, and I thought, it don't take two brain cells to figure out that, over 500,000 white people are going to go die and fight one another over slavery. I mean, it might have been a small part of it, but it was the least part of it. It's, as far as, it was all about the states' rights and stuff and everything, and then because most of the people in the battles and everything, other than maybe the elite corps, never owned a slave. These were all just working people, and back in the 1860s, I mean, life was tough enough already and everything, and most of these people were just sharecroppers and stuff like that, and in the South and stuff.
So what did she? By the way, I've only barely tracked this one. I've not pursued it yet. But we got about a minute left here for the break. What did she say or not say that has caused so much angst in the media?
That this guy kind of got her on. She didn't mention slavery as part of being the reason why the Civil War happened. And I'm thinking, yeah, because it was. Actually, Lincoln and everything just kind of used it as a wedge tool. He freed the slaves, basically, to cause trouble in the South. It wouldn't. I mean, I knew he thought all men should be free and everything, but basically it was they were going to make ends with the South, whether it was slavery stayed in or not.
So am I to understand then that the jackassery in the media has determined that Nikki Haley is no longer qualified to be president because she didn't mention slavery in her answer to a question that was really not a serious question in the first place?
Because she knows the truth of the Civil War, and the reporter had no clue.
There you go. Well, all right. So you know what? 2024.
I mean, it only makes sense. Like I say, if people don't just go ahead.
No, it does. But brother, I am running late. I got to get to the break. But your point is well taken. There's a whole part of the cause and action of the Civil War that related to even other issues than just slavery. You're all right. All right, man. We got to go. Jeff, be safe on the road, brother. Butters, take me to a break. Take it quick. I ran it long. We'll come right back. We'll have just a minute together, and then putting a lid on this one, heading closer to the weekend. Tomorrow is Friday. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just, I mean, like, wow, making common sense like a superpower up in here. I tell you who else a lot of common sense in the way they do what they do. That's folks at ZLA Solutions. So ZLA Solutions, they are like epic good at what they do, which is helping businesses streamline their operations. They can do things like help you with your quality control, your logistics, your warehousing. But y'all, their bread and butter remains staffing. So if part of what you're doing requires you to find more people, doesn't matter whether it's a onesies and twosies, a small business, or if it's a whole shift of people in a big business, they can help you with that. Every industry, they work in all kinds of fields, and they can do what I call the recruiting, the background checks, and the drug testing for blue collar, white collar, and no collar, all of it. You need people, ZLA Solutions. They like to say at ZLA, we don't make it, we make it better, because that really is their mission in life, is to help you make your business better. And so just give them a thought, give them a call. Their website, zlausa.com. I know these folks personally. I trust who they are and what they do. ZLA Solutions at zlausa.com. All right, with a little bit of time left, let me grab a few text messages here. Scott from Decatur says, tire manufacturers should threaten to stop selling their products in Washington State. Something's going to happen because they're not going to stand for it. They're not going to start having to make whole new tire lines just for Washington State, and next thing you know, California wants theirs, and then Oregon wants theirs, and it won't work. JT Lacey Springs says low roll resistance, training wheels. Enough said. Oh, or train wheels. Okay, I see what he's saying. And Jeff from Indiana, I see that message. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And then John from Huntsville says, Phil, your awesome performance today gets you an A++. However, today's co-winners are Butters and Lee with an A++ for their equally fantastic performances. Congratulations. Also, I just wanted to say there were so many jackassery sound effects that I'm waiting for Phil to make another book just called Jackassery in the year 2023. And the sequel can be called Jackassery in the year 2024. That's not a bad idea. Maybe I just come out with a book and call it Jackassery.
Definitely a shirt, a T-shirt design.
You know what? I feel something brewing here. We got to get some new merch anyway. So maybe there's I'm a right side ruffian and I oppose all jackassery and the cacistocracy. We'll put all of our terms on one shirt.
Nice. Can we do right side radio bingo?
Oh, like the different words?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, not just B12. No, it's jackassery.
The day capitalism was brewed. All right.
I like it. On top of that, I got to have my book, and then we're going to have Right Side Coffee, which by the way, the more robust of the coffee would be called the Ruffian Blend. I've already decided.
Nice. I like it.
I'm just planning. I'm just scheming. I'm just talking. I'm just working things out. All right, listen, y'all. You're an amazing audience. We hope that you have the amazing night that you deserve. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Butters and me both. Y'all have a great night.